Hey there, friends. I hope you are having a lovely Labor Day weekend. I have just finished another little golden book. This is Hansel and Gretel, 1954, and it's kind of, you know what inspired me about this little story was that I have been doing Halloween journals, and I have all this Halloween stuff, and I thought, Hansel and Gretel is really a kind of a scary story when you think about it. This witch, and she's going to eat the children, and wicked stepmothers, all kinds of evilness going on, right? So I thought, well, today would be a great day for me to work on a little bit of Hansel and Gretel, since I have been working a lot on Halloween journals. So, Hansel and Gretel, 1954. It is 7 by 8, has a 1 3/4 inch spine on it. You will notice a little bit of peek through with the Tyvek that I use to reinforce and bump out this book. I was very careful about the way that I cut the fabric for the book spine. I did not want to interfere at all, with this wonderful imagery that we have on the front. Particularly, I was going to neaten this up with like some ribbon or something, but then I realized that if I did that, you guys, we would lose this rabbit over here. And I love the way he's peeking at Hansel and Gretel. Love the expression on the face of the fox over here. I just did not want to interfere with this at all. And honestly, the white looks like a border anyway. Eloise Wilkins illustrated this incredible book. I love paying attention to the cost of the book when it was new. It was 25 cents when it was new. The closure I chose, of course, is 31, which is October 31st, which is Halloween. So let's take a look in this little golden book. It is in just such great shape. When I think about this, it's like 4 years before I was born, a child had this in his or her hands. It was 2 years before my mama met my daddy that a child had this in their hands. So to me, these books just have remarkable enchantment to them, especially when they are in such good shape, you guys. And it is yellowed to the max. It is a beautiful, beautiful color. Okay, Hansel and Gretel by the Brothers Grimm. Grimm, a series on TV that I miss so much. I thought it was so well done. I loved, I can't remember the auntie's name, the trailer that she had that had all the drawings of all of the Grimm characters. Not the Grimm characters, but what were they? They were like the monsters, but they weren't called monsters. Darn, I would love to see that whole series over again. I just really did love it. Okay, Hansel and Gretel by the Brothers Grimm. Pictures by the wonderful Eloise Wilkins. 1954, right down here, Simon & Schuster. This fresh illustration of one of the best-loved folk tales of the Brother Grimm is the work of Eloise Wilkins, whose pictures have long delighted children. On the edge of a small clearing near a great forest, there lived a poor woodcutter and his wife and his 2 children, Hansel and Gretel. The wife was the children's stepmother, and she was cruel to them. Okay, so the family had always been poor, but one time there was a great famine in the country, and the woodcutter could not earn even enough to buy food for his family. So, they decide early in the morning we will take the children into the forest and leave them in the thickest part of it, and they'll never find their way home again, and we'll be rid of them. So that is kind of how the story starts, of course, and I've put in some super cool graphic 45 paper here for you. It says fairy tale, magical, run, hide, you bewitch me, and then it has an assortment of fairy tales right here. A little crow sitting working on some books with keys. I thought keys are, essential to this story, as eventually Hansel gets himself locked into the witch's cage. Lots of papers, you guys, for you to play with. You can make mini books, you can make skinny books, you can do tags, you can do whatever you want to, because there's a lot in these books to play with. The next morning, before the sun was up, the stepmother shouted to the children, "Get up, you lazy bones. We are going into the forest to cut wood. Here's a piece of bread. Don't eat it because you won't get any more." Then they set off for the forest with Hansel and Gretel lagging in the rear. Gretel carried their bread, and Hansel stopped every few steps to drop a pebble on the ground. Now, their intent is to, of course, find their way back home. A bookmark that says magical. This is a paper bag. A little bit of spider spookiness for you. You could actually make a mini book out of this. It is a folded piece that has a spider on the front of it. This is some cheesecloth, which to me kind of is reminiscent of a spider's web. Oh my gosh, you guys. Yesterday morning, a cicada was caught in a spider's web right outside my sunroom studio window. It was amazing. I was like, oh my goodness, he was struggling and struggling, and I thought, I understand nature and survival of the fittest, but I feel like I need to go out there and get him out of that web. But, he extricated himself, and it was really something to watch. I am very intrigued by things like that. We've got a little bit of spidery ribbon for you to play with. This says Happy Halloween, and another element for you to play with. Inside here is a wooden pumpkin. You can do what you want to with him. He is he's very bright and super cool and glittery and all those kinds of wonderful things. So he is in the paper bag right here. This says caution, enter if you dare. So it's some caution tape, and when I'm thinking of Hansel and Gretel walking in the woods, I'm thinking, somebody should have put police tape and orange cones around that, because there's a disaster in the making. Finally, the father called back, "Hansel, hurry up. What's keeping you?" "Oh, I'm just looking at my white kitten who's sitting on the roof," says Hansel. "She's trying to say goodbye to me." "You fool," said the stepmother. "That's the sunshine glinting on the roof." So Hansel keeps looking back, hoping that he'll be able to find his way back home. When they reached the middle of the forest, the father built a good fire. Then the stepmother said, "Wait by the fire while we go chop wood, and we'll come back and get you." Hansel and Gretel fell asleep, and when they woke up, it was night. Hansel comforted Gretel, who was frightened by the dark. Then when the moon came up, they could see the pebbles that Hansel had dropped, and they followed them all the way home. Friends, this is a little goodie bag for you. It has the 7 of hearts. Get it? Hearts, 7 of hearts. I think we can... Okay, cool. The front of the book had a bit of glare, so I had it propped up. There are a lot of things to play with in here. Chippy bits, painty papers, ribbons, fabric, just all kinds of fun for you to have. More florist ribbon right here, and there's an ATC stuck in here for you to play with as well. A little element that says Happy Halloween. It is an invitation. It says date, time, you're invited, RSVP. A bookmark here with I just took a little bit of ribbon and stapled it to the top of that. Hansel and Gretel got home, and the cruel stepmother planned again to get rid of them, and the next day they all went once more into the forest. This time Hansel was not able to collect pebbles, but he dropped breadcrumbs instead. But when the evening came, they could not find the breadcrumbs. The birds had eaten them. All night they walked, and all the next morning, suddenly they saw before them a little house, all made of gingerbread with windows of spun sugar, and they ran toward it eagerly. I love the owl that is sitting in the tree right here. Hansel ate a piece of the roof, and Gretel ate some window, and then they heard a voice saying, "Nibble, nibble, like a mouse, who is nibbling at my house?" An old woman came out leaning on a crutch, and the two children were frightened, but the ugly old woman spoke very sweetly. This is an envelope pocket for you. It's got a few things to play with right here. We've got some magical mushrooms right here. This is a vintage Hallmark playing card. It is 10 of diamonds. "Do come in," she said. "You must be very hungry and tired, for you look as if you've come a long way." Then she led them into her house. There she invited them to sit down to dinner, and they were so hungry they ate everything on the table. So they've got some ham and bread. It looks like they're drinking some cider. You guys, Mike Deacon is like a genius. He's done a printable that is called Graves Anatomy, and it is so fun. These are two elements from it: arsenic, poison. I'm trying to think of what would be the labels on this Wicked Witches spice rack. This says blue stone, an antidote. So it's got, the skull and crossbones on it to denote poison. She might have some mosquito sting powder to use on the children. She's also, to me, she'd be gathering these recipes about how to cook these babies. Grandmother's jelly roll is right here. This is from a 1950s recipe box. When they had finished, the old woman put them to bed in great comfortable beds. Love these beds. You can see the doors on them. Now, although the woman seemed so kind, she was really a wicked witch who ate little children. So while Hansel and Gretel were sleeping, she was thinking of the fine meal she would have. And, she might have something like pie. This is a 1950s greeting card, vintage greeting card, a Mother's Day wish from your son. She may have children and rice. This is another handwritten vintage recipe from the 1950s. She may have plans for a lunchbox. I love this because I think this is the Metropolitan Cookbook. I'm not quite sure. It's 1953, I think. Suggested cold lunches for children, you guys. A cottage cheese sandwich on brown bread, a jelly sandwich on white bread, an apple and a half-pint bottle of milk. For an industrial worker, minced ham sandwich with white bread, Swiss cheese sandwich with rye bread, a whole tomato, apple dumpling, and a cup of coffee in a thermos. Very interesting. So we have some cooking ephemera here. The next morning, of course, Gretel was put to work, and Hansel wound up in a cage that is hanging in the witch's house. And every morning she's going to kind of check him and see if he is gaining enough weight for her to cook him. But every day he kind of sticks this bone out, and she says decides he's way too bony to cook. This is from a dietetics cookbook, and I think this is 1943. It explains something about bread, potatoes, meat, and how digestion works, the anatomically correct way that digestion works. I thought this was a great little element, to put in this book. I also think that the witch might cook with flea legs extract. This, of course, is a bone element. This is from Mike Deacon's Graves Anatomy. I'll put a link to Mike's site here. I'm really enjoying this so much. It's very anatomical, my friends, very anatomical. This is, of course, a skeleton foot. This is a skeleton head. This is the back, which shows the muscles and everything, the sinews. I'm also thinking, the witch was thinking about what she could cook with the kids. She might do liver loaf, or liver with vegetables, or liver with rice and potatoes, or liver stuffed green peppers. I thought that was fun as well. Pure concentrated extract of crow beak. this is a sweet little element that says all the great stories have witches in them. And they really do, don't they? Another little Mike Deacon element right here. Friends, this is a chipboard witch, but let me tell you about it. And do note this, my friends. The top of this broom is a little wiggly, but not wiggly enough to fall off. I love the profile of the witch, and I thought kind of, I shouldn't put that in there because it's a little bit chippy, and then I thought, this is a vintage book, so it will fit in that, chippy category. But just, I think this is a Martha Stewart piece, but just note that, she is a little chippy right up here on her broomstick. I love her profile. Carbolic acid, again, these poison labels here, more of the dietetics book, and this, represents the bone that Hansel kept sticking out of the cage. Poor Gretel, she is just working and working and working. Gretel didn't get very much to eat, but the best kind of food was given to Hansel, for the witch thought he was too thin. Each morning she asked him to stretch out his fingers so she could feel how fat he was, for she could not see well, but Hansel stuck out an old bone, so she thought he was not growing any fatter, and I thought that this was a great place for that. For the bone, again, from the Mike Deacon Gray's Anatomy printable. The witch came to Gretel and said, crawl in the oven and see if it's hot enough. The witch has decided that she's going to go ahead and cook Hansel anyway. And Gretel smartly replied, I don't know how to do it. How do I climb in the oven? Stupid, cried the witch. Well, I could get in there myself. And she bent down and she put her head in the oven. This is the other part of the vintage greeting card. Who thinks, this is from Georgie, 1950. Who thinks he's sure one lucky guy with a mother like you who's nice as pie? Okay, so the witch is bent down, putting her head in the oven. Quick as a flash, Gretel pushed her in and slammed the door. Then Gretel let Hansel out of his cage. Hansel, we're free, she cried. The old witch is dead. Filling their pockets with glittering jewels from the witch's hoard, they set off through the woods, determined to find their way home. But though Hansel and Gretel walked and walked, they were still lost, and not a thing looked familiar. This is a sweet bookmark that features a castle, and it says enchanting right here. Some duct tape that features skeletons, and another piece right here for you guys. Again, the beautiful graphic 45 paper, Once Upon an Eerie Tale. Just when they had given up hope, they heard a happy cry. There was their father coming toward them. Hansel, Gretel, cried the father, hurrying to them. I have looked and looked for you. He took them home, and Hansel and Gretel found that their cruel stepmother had gone away forever. And with the jewels that they brought from the witch's house, they were able to live comfortably and happily ever after. So there we go, you guys. A little scary tale about Hansel and Gretel. I should have this in the shop a little later on today. I hope you enjoyed this storytelling episode, you guys. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.